Welcome back to Victory Road's World Cup of VGC, sponsored by Elgato, GG Tour, and Metafy. My name is Stefan Mott, and back with me on the mic is Hayden McTavish. We are getting into the second half of today's matches, and these ones look pretty good. I'm pretty excited. How about you, Hayden?
Yeah, I'm just as excited as I was before. We're getting to sort of the second half of matches. We just got to watch some extraordinary stakes, and I'm excited to see some interesting Pokemon matchups this time around.
Yeah, we've had some interesting battles. We've had Sun versus Rain. We've had some of the classics, and now we get a classic mirror, kind of. Not a complete mirror, but we have a restricted mirror coming our way for this one. It's going to be India versus South Africa. This is an interesting match. Mathematically speaking, India was not guaranteed to the next round when this match started, but they only needed a single win. So at this point, they've already guaranteed their spot into the next round. South Africa, on the other hand, though, one of the underdogs coming into this group. It was a bit of a tough one for them. Norway, Panama, tough opposition along with India, but they did get that week 1 win over Panama. So even though things are not looking great, they're down 3-0. They haven't taken a game yet. They're still mathematically in this until they... I mean, if they win this match, I think they're guaranteed into the next round. So, never stop believing. Keep going until there's no reason to go anymore. Even still, even if they get a draw, it's still possible they advance. Like, if Panama defeats Norway and they pull out a draw, they also still advance. So South Africa, still a lot on the line here, even if things aren't quite going their way just yet.
Yeah, if there's one thing we know about Pokemon, is that you can never count anyone out. And I think I'm quite excited to see if South Africa is going to be able to work this comeback out. Maybe it'll start with this set we're watching. And even if not, I think it's just such an extraordinary opportunity to be able to play a team that has been as dominant as India has been in this bracket. And to be able to sort of test the mettle of your team and sort of learn everything you can from playing, see how many games you can get out of that. And then as the underdog, you've got the advantage to maybe pull an upset, or even just getting close is this wonderful experience too.
This is also just a really great statement of intent from India so far as well. 7-1 against Norway, 7-1 against Panama, currently 3-0 against South Africa. And this is a team that when I looked at it before the tournament, I thought to myself, okay, it's India. It's really strong, but they're missing a couple players. Siddharth Inc. is not on this team because he's taking a year off to try to play for the US next year. Some of these really strong players that would have been eligible for India are not part of the team. And yet, here they are absolutely dominating this group in a harder fashion than I think any other team is dominating their group. So really, really impressive stuff from this Indian side that is really showing that they are here to play and that this is not about getting to the group stage for them. This is very clearly about them going all the way to the playoffs and maybe beyond.
Yeah, India definitely a team to watch in all of this. And so I'm excited that we get to showcase one of their matches and see just the potential for all of these brilliant players to be able to show us the best they've got in the game.
Yes, indeed. It's going to be really cool as well to see how Karthik decides to play this out. He's one of the players that was very, very pivotal for India in the World Cup of 2021. He went 4-1, predominantly playing a Zacian team. Of course, if you remember, that was the Series 10 format. No Dynamax, single restricted. So a big fan of the Zacian stuff. Thus far, though, Karthik's struggling to really find his footing in this tournament. He didn't play week 2. He lost week 1. But this is going to be a good moment for him to potentially do that. He's playing something a little bit different. Not going to be going with the Zacian stuff that he was using last year. But on the other side, Nabeel, a bit of a newer player as well, potentially not really the most decorated player, but that doesn't mean that he can't win this. He was not a member of the World Cup in 2021 for South Africa, but he impressed the management enough to be called up for this one. So there's definitely something there, and I'm excited to see what he brings to the table.
Yeah, talking about what's being brought to the table, very excited to say we have the Calyrex Ice and Palkia Mirror here, with a different supporting cast. Both have the Incineroar and the Tapu Fini, but the other two are different. We've got a Porygon 2 and an Amoonguss versus an Indeedee and a Mimikyu. Very interesting. I don't think I've seen very many mirrors at all of Palkia and Calyrex.
Yeah, especially this is an interesting one as well, because the one that Nabeel is using is one that was a bit more common as a 6 earlier on in the format. The Mimikyu has really fallen off over the recent months, but it does allow something like a Shadow Sneak to proc the weakness policy on that Calyrex Ice Rider, which allows it to just go insanely hard. And that, to me, it makes it seem like it may well be that weakness policy Ice Rider, even though, again, that as well has kind of fallen off a little bit recently. We still have people running it, of course, but we have a lot of people running things like White Herb or Babiri even on the Ice Riders. So Karthik's team looks like it may well be more in that wheelhouse. We have a bit more of a slower passive supporting cast with things like Porygon 2, Amoonguss. The Finny and the Amoonguss are interesting. They do have on paper what looks to be a little bit of anti-synergy, but we've seen a lot of these Palkia Cali Ice teams making use of both of them, bringing them either to completely different matchups or just choosing to, maybe you use the Amoonguss first, get a couple spores, and then bring in the Finny, or, there's a lot of different ways that you can play that, and despite the appearance of anti-synergy, they work really, really well together to shore up some of these difficult matchups.
And we are seeing that Tapu Fini come out on the top next to Palkia, and we've got the Palkia Mirror right off the bat, and a battle of terrains too. So much happening on this first leading turn.
All right, so interesting to see the Indeedee coming. It was something that we were talking about as a group in our caster call during the break, and somebody, I think it might have been Ben, it might have even been me, I don't even remember. Well, somebody said that we didn't think the Indeedee was likely to come to this match, but already being proven wrong here. The Psychic Seed proccing on that Indeedee gonna allow it to survive the Palkia hits a little bit more effectively than otherwise. And then, of course, we have the Palkia sort of mirror as well. This is really awkward for Karthik, right? Because Palkia, you can use the Misty Terrain from your own Tapu Fini defensively to prevent the opposing Palkia from hitting you super hard with Max Wormwind, but now there's no Misty Terrain anymore, and you're not the one with redirect if you're Karthik, so it's a little bit awkward.
Yeah, I think Indeedee really showing us why it can be brought here. It totally flips this Palkia mirror on its head, that the bottom side has Follow Me support for its Palkia and can do so much damage to Karthik's Palkia. And we're gonna see the Palkia just has to switch out. It's just in so much danger, and Incineroar's coming in.
And we did see Nabeel go for the Trick Room, so maybe correctly calling that switch out, but at the very least, putting himself in a great position. We have that Incineroar there, sure. Incineroar is a little bit of a weird one. Ooh, big miss there on the Nature's Madness as well. Incineroar's weird, right? Because on the one hand, Palkia blows up Incineroar, but on the other hand, Parting Shot is slower than the Palkia. You can get out pretty easily. Maybe less of a benefit, though, when you're probably going into a follow-meing Indeedee.
I think there's a really interesting question here, too, of, is it good to have Trick Room up for either side? There's such a similar speed profile from both sides that it's really not clear. This Trick Room was set up, that seems like it would be useful. It means that you get to attack whatever comes in for the Incineroar after Parting Shot. Maybe that's nice. But I think it's an open question for each side to sort of decide, when do I set Trick Room and why?
Well, one thing that we as the spectators do know is that Palkia that we're seeing here from Nabeel has 197 HP, which means that it is a maximum HP invested Palkia, which to me says probably not running any speed. Some people do like to invest some speed onto the Palkia on the Palkia Cali Ice core, just to be able to play a little bit better out of Trick Room. Buenti is somebody who, for example, loves a super fast Palkia on his Palkia Cali Ice core, but not going to be seeing that here, and because of the lack of speed investment, probably leads Nabeel to think it's pretty safe to click that Trick Room.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a big factor in Mirrors is how the speeds match up and who wants Trick Room up. And I think we're probably going to start seeing that in this game. Is Trick Room super safe for Nabeel, or is Karthik going to come up with something like the Calyrex that makes it a lot harder?
Oh, that's a bit of an awkward switch in here, right? Because the Calyrex is going to take a big hit from whatever comes out, honestly. Nature's Madness, once again, going to come in from Karthik. This time it will connect with the Indeedee, so managing to dish out quite a lot of damage. But it is the Max Quake coming out of Palkia, so the least amount of damage possible going into this Calyrex, but it still doesn't love to take that hit. A good 40% of that HP going away.
Yeah, a pretty big hit on the Calyrex, but when you're burning Dynamax turns and Trick Room turns, you really want to be doing so much damage, and so I think still a really nice switch from Karthik to be able to get this Calyrex in position. It winds up not taking too much damage, and now you've got the threat of the Glacial Lance. If that Tapu Fini has Heal Pulse, and you're able to knock out the Indeedee before it can redirect that Heal Pulse with a Glacial Lance, you've got a lot of ways to sort of just weather the storm of this Dynamax Palkia, and we'll have to see if Karthik's able to go for that.
Yeah, Finny does very often carry Heal Pulse, especially when it's running the Nature's Madness set, but with Follow Me, you can't really risk clicking it, I think, right? But I guess Glacial Lance is going to pick up the Indeedee first, And that is going to be a big turn there. The Calyrex getting the KO, getting the boost, dishing out a little bit of damage there to the Palkia, and then also getting heal pulsed right back on up. So a really nice turn there by Karthik for sure.
Yeah, I think really nice to sort of see that play that like you'd think, oh, I can't really go for heal pulse in this situation because of that redirection, but you can set up like just the right speed profile because Trick Room's set up that you can like get the Glacial Lance off, get the heal pulse off, and then you know the Tapu Fini's slow enough that it's able to heal the Calyrex before it has its attack reset back down to neutral.
All right, an interesting set that we're seeing here on this Tapu Fini here from Nabeel. Double attacks with Taunt and Protect and Leftovers. That's a very abnormal Fini set, and I'm really curious to see how this actually pans out. A lot of offense there, going to make it really nice for dealing damage to the opposing Palkia potentially, even through redirect like Rage Powder on that Amoonguss because of Dazzling Gleam. And then also the Leftovers are going to make it a little difficult to remove that Fini potentially, so kind of a cool set that we're seeing here from Nabeel.
Yeah, I think a lot of interesting tools from Nabeel that might be really helpful in the matchup. I think like the one open question is, what does Nabeel have for the Calyrex? Are you going to be able to do enough damage to it? Is your Fini going to be slow enough to taunt the other Tapu Fini so it can't heal pulse? Sort of just this question of like, if I want to play to Trick Room, how do I stop the Calyrex that's restricted, that's just built for Trick Room?
Yeah, and this is going to be a kind of a moment of truth here on this turn. Interested to see if Karthik Dynamaxes that Calyrex. If you do Dynamax it, it's going to be getting a little bit less value out of the heal pulse as well. So that's an inherent risk, and of course the Calyrex is not going to go down to a single hit from the opposing Palkia anyway, but we see just the Protect coming out instead, just to stall out this last turn of Trick Room, of Dynamax rather. Mist coming in as well is going to be really interesting. It's going to prevent things like Incineroar dropping Intimidates, it's going to prevent any kind of stat drops whatsoever, but it won't offset the existing Max Wormwind drop from that previous turn.
All that said, with the Protect and the Misty Terrain, there's just so little damage coming out on that Calyrex, and even with the crit, and then like no attack drop. So like that earlier damage is there, but it's a really tough challenge for Nabeel to be able to do damage to this Calyrex now, or even to lure its offense.
That being said, though, Taunt on the opposing Fini does mean that the Calyrex will go down to one final hit from either the Palkia or the Fini here. So no heal pulse as an option here for Karthik. We'll see how much damage this neutral Calyrex can get going, though. It does have the, of course, the drop from the Wormwind, but also the plus attack chilling Nay boost from earlier on. So back to neutral. Is that enough to take out the Palkia? With the assistance of Tapu Fini, probably. But we'll have to see how this turn goes. It's going to be a bit of a weird one.
Yeah, absolutely. Calyrex is going to be able to get off the Special Lance. Is it going to be able to do enough to pick up that Palkia? That's the big question. We're going to see it do almost enough. So if this Tapu Fini is able to go first and Moonblast, that'll finish off the Palkia. And then it's all on this Tapu Fini this turn to see if it can maybe pick up that KO in the Calyrex or do something else about it.
Yeah, so it's going to be a bit of a trade here on the Restricteds, but overall, Karthik's got to be feeling pretty good about that. He's not invested his Dynamax just yet. Nabeel has, and we're sitting in a 3v3 situation. I will say, personally, I feel like Fini versus Fini, Nabeel's is probably better into the Fini mirror in this very specific situation. It's actually a 3v2, in fact, excuse me. But yeah, we have the Calyrex coming out here, and of course the Palkia still in the back for Karthik, so this is going to be a difficult one for Nabeel to navigate. But he does have options here. You know, Moonblast dropping the special attack of Palkia is definitely a possibility, as well as dishing out quite a lot of damage. I wouldn't say it's over yet.
Yeah, I think Karthik's sort of playing the restricted game very well. You sort of have your Calyrex out against your opponent's Palkia, like in Trick Room, and that was really well done. But Nabeel sort of playing so that this Tapu Fini is in position in terrain against the Palkia, and so even though Karthik has Dynamax and more Pokemon, if there's any Pokemon that can steamroll and flip a match on its head, it's definitely something like a Calyrex.
For sure. And of course, even at neutral, the Glacial Lance is going to be dishing out a reasonable amount of damage here to this Palkia. The Dynamax, though, is going to make it so that it's going to seem relatively negligible in comparison. And I guess the big question is, how much damage is the Palkia going to dish out to whatever it goes after?
Absolutely, so much damage potential from this Palkia, and not just the damage potential. The being able to set up that Max Wormwind is such a big deal on, like, any attack drops would be forever, but we're actually going to see the Max Geyser just going for as much damage as possible, going to take this Calyrex down to just a quarter, and there's so little hit points left on Nabeel's side of the field to be able to try to flip this game.
Yes. This is a weird one, though. I'm trying to think about this from Nabeel's perspective of how to get out of here. No Moonblast drop is a really, really unfortunate turn of events there for Nabeel, because I feel like if we have Moonblast drops and such, ooh, that's big damage from the Calyrex as well. It's a critical hit even. One more Moonblast is going to take the Palkia out, and I'm thinking about this from the perspective of Nabeel. He has leftovers recovery. If the Palkia, I mean, so does Karthik, really, but if the Palkia is removed from the field, Incin is the last Pokemon. There's definitely a way out of this for Nabeel, but it's going to rely on a little bit of RNG. Might need a bit of a Moonblast crit here or there, because, of course, we are going to have to consider the Nature's Madness as well on the Finny from Karthik. This is a weird endgame, though, potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, a lot of players feeling each other out in terms of the tools. Like, both of them have this really strong answer to Palkia. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I just realized that Mist is still up, so Moonblast can't drop the Palkia.
Oh, yes. Some really well-played games to sort of, like, control the odds, going for, like, Max Geysers to get damage off instead of worrying about, like, trying to get Max Wormins up, the Mist setup, and, yeah, we're down to very low hit points on both sides of the field, or on both Pokemon on Nabeel's side. Palkia's gone, but both of these Pokemon are now in Moonblast KO range from this Finny, and it's going to be a tall order to be able to take out the type of Finny in return.
Yeah, this is going to be probably all she wrote here as the Moonblast goes on into the Calyrex Shadow Rider, or the Calyrex Ice Rider. Down it goes, 1v2, but, I mean, we still have leftovers, maybe, believe. I don't know how much damage is going to be dealt out by the Moonblast here, but we are going to have the potential for one Protect here when the Incineroar comes back in. One of the other problems, though, is that there isn't really a great way to hit the Incineroar, is there? Because there's no Water move, unfortunately. But still, interesting game number one, honestly.
Yeah, I think if Nabeel wants to, he can sort of play this out for another couple of turns, just buy some time to think. I think it's really interesting to see sort of like just the sheer amount of difference that there was in like the mileage that each player got off of their Dynamax with Palkia. Karthik did just so much damage, and Nabeel was really struggling to sort of get like the Trick Room positioning up and then stop the Calyrex and everything.
Yeah, I definitely think that Nabeel is doing the correct thing and trying to play this out, because, you know, you never know how much damage is a Moonblast crit going to do. Is Karthik going to try to click Nature's Madness and miss? You know, there's a lot of different things that could still happen here, and especially when you have the opportunity to protect every other turn and get an additional tick of that leftovers recovery, there's still quite a lot of time on the timer in this game. Nabeel is going to have quite a lot of opportunities to hit Karthik's Pokemon as long as he can stay alive. So I think it's definitely the call to stay in the game here, but it's going to be a tall order for this Finny to make the comeback.
Yeah, I think you just try to get as much information as you can, buy yourself some time, because that can be really useful when you just lost a game rather convincingly, to sort of like give yourself a chance to reset, think of what to do. But we are going to see this Moonblast come out, and if it's not getting the KO, it's getting pretty close. And the Throat Chop is revealed, but that's going to finish off this first game. And Nabeel now has to find a way to win the next two games to be able to secure the set for South Africa.
Honestly, not a bad game number one there by Nabeel. We ended up just seeing Karthik positioning very, very well, and just knowing the matchup very well, knowing how to position around that, despite a really awkward turn one lead there for Karthik. So overall, I think Nabeel's game plan was good. Karthik just kind of played a little bit better that time. So Nabeel, he's going to need to sort of lean into the game plan if he has a game two plan already planned out, and just try to level up that play just a little bit more. Maybe make Karthik a little bit more uncomfortable. But one of the really iffy things is going to be Karthik knows a lot of important stuff about this team now. Specifically, he knows that Finny has Taunt, which is a very, very weird thing for Finny to be carrying. And it's very, very good information for Karthik to have going forward.
I think it's tough when you give up information as well as losing a game. But at the same time, we did see that like Nabeel has the tools to be able to get through this game potentially. We saw like just that one turn where the Max Quake went off into the Calyrex and it had a safe switch in, whereas any other attack would have done so much damage. And so maybe there's like a single read in this next game that even if Nabeel uses the same strategy, this is still going to be like a battle on a knife's edge.
Yeah, and the other thing as well is that we have that leftovers Finny as an option for both players, really. But for Nabeel, maybe if he's able to get another Quake boost or two onto that Finny before that endgame, that also makes things a little bit more difficult for Karthik's Finny to remove it at the end of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of like sort of defensive plays you can go for and offensive. So we're seeing like the same lead with Ndidi and Palkia. There's a lot you can do in terms of like offensive threat. But then, yeah, there's absolutely like this Tapu Fini in the back can survive. We saw that the Calyrex actually took a lot of hits last game too. So a whole lot of win conditions for each player, and it's really tough to, I think, identify which one they're going to go for.
One of the other really confusing things about, or not confusing, but really awkward things about this matchup is there's so many mind games with potential switch-ins. Like, all right, if you're Nabeel, you can max Wormwind the Palkia, but there's also potentially a Fini that switches into that, and then you just wasted your first turn of Dynamax. But at the same time, that's also such an obvious thing to click that maybe Karthik then goes, he's never going to do that. That's just too big of a risk, and then he leaves the Palkia in. There's so many different mind games that are at play in the early stages of this matchup where you don't know what the 4 Pokemon of the opponent are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think bringing Tapu Fini in the back, or just the threat of Tapu Fini in the back, not leading it, gives you so many options here, and we are going to see that come in. So protecting the Palkia if you go in for that, and there's not really a good way to punish that by attacking into that Tapu Fini. So just so much threat from the switching in this game, not just the Pokemon that are on the field.
Yeah, and I really like this play by Karthik as well. He's going to Dynamax the Palkia. He knows that with the Misty Terrain, he will have protected his Palkia against a counter Max Wormwind, but he also protects his, he also switches in a resist into a potential Max Geyser into the Incineroar. So overall, just a great cover-all move here by Karthik to position himself as well as possible into this turn number 1. We'll have to see how much damage this Palkia does, though, because we did see the Psychic Seed already proc on the Ndidi.
Yeah, I think the other thing to be considering here is that if the faster Palkia goes for Geyser, then the slower Palkia's Max Geyser is going to do a little bit more damage. Like, you're setting up Rain for the other side. Mm-hmm. And as much as it's nice to get the Tapu Fini in to protect your Palkia, you now can no longer threaten the other Palkia as much. So there's like a whole lot of, like, in a mirror, like sort of complementary pieces that like Tapu Fini might help both sides, Palkia might help both sides with setting up Rain.
We do have the Max Quake coming on in. Oh, this is actually kind of exactly what I was talking about, except on the other side of the field. We've already got the Quake boost coming on in to beef up that Tapu Fini for the endgame, which is really rough when we already know there's also an Incineroar. So we have Quake boosts to offset any potential special damage coming in, but then also we still have Intimidate in the back to offset any physical damage coming on in. That Fini still takes a massive amount of damage, though, from that Max Geyser. That has to be a crit, and it is.
So that's really interesting. Karthik sort of like playing for this, like, I saw that you couldn't take out my Tapu Fini last game. I'm going to make sure it sets up its terrain and then gets the special defense boost. But suddenly that's all flipped on its head. Like, this Tapu Fini has taken enough damage where I'm not sure if maybe a double target would be able to pick it up. And then that's like one loss of a defensive tool for Karthik playing to this defensive game. That's a really tough order.
It really is here. And now we have another interesting situation where it looks like he's going to go for the Max Dragon here with Helping Hand to as an option, maybe, to offset the drop from the Misty Terrain somewhat, at least. Not really sure how much damage this is really going to accomplish, but instead, no, switching it up, going for the Quake into the Fini. I like this, though. I like just continuing to dish out the damage to the Fini, because the only recovery is that Leftovers.
Yeah, I think, like, the really nice way to capitalize on that one crit, just like keep doubling down, make sure that you can't build up this defensive tool with the special defense boost. All that said, like, these Max Quakes just keep coming out, and I'm not sure actually how much damage this Max Quake will do from the Palkia. Like, will you be able to take out the Tapu Fini even with that first critical hit, or do you need a second?
So that's the other thing, right? This shouldn't take out, I don't think, but if the Ndidi survives, then all of a sudden we have the opportunity for Helping Hand next turn as an option to guarantee the KO there on that Fini. There's a lot of things still going on here. Now, the Fini, I think we've also seen, does not have Protect, if I'm not mistaken. I think we've seen Moonblast, Nature's Madness, Mist, and Heal Pulse, which means that there is no opportunity to protect for additional Leftovers recovery.
So I think a really nice way then to play around Max Quake, like maybe you don't have to get the KO this turn. Good to point that out, but this Tapu Fini now only has a quarter of its health, and that's a whole lot less that's a whole lot less Tapu Fini to worry about than if it were at full with that Max Quake, where it's almost game over. So really well identified sort of where you need to do the targets, even if you're not getting KOs with your Dynamax.
This is a very, very interesting way to play this out here by Nabeel. I actually really like this for him now, because he has the opportunity to just get Trick Room up now with this Mimikyu. And from there, both players don't have their Dynamax anymore. You have the opportunity to proc a policy on your incoming Ice Rider, essentially whenever you want. And from there, you can really just like go ham with Glacial Lances. But this is an interesting turn from him. I'm not entirely sure if Shadow Sneak is going to be able to pick up the Finny KO, but opting for the Protect on the Palkia as well to stall out the final turn of Dynamax on Karthik's side.
I'm curious if maybe this is a way to sort of try to play for positioning, because if Tapu Fini had stayed in here, but the Calyrex comes in. And so if it has a weakness policy, we're going to see a whole lot of stuff happening this turn. We know, for those who maybe didn't see, Nabeel clicked that Shadow Sneak into that slot. Palkia's going to max guard, so like well called there potentially, but the Shadow Sneak going into that Calyrex, is it going to do some nice damage, or is it going to activate the weakness policy?
Okay, well, no weakness policy, but the interesting thing here as well, though, is that was a very interesting read there by Nabeel, right? So I think, in general, that's a very big win for him, right? He gets rid of the Quake boosts on the Finny by forcing the switch out, and does not proc a weakness policy there on the Calyrex. But the other big thing is that Karthik switched in that Calyrex reading a Trick Room, and there wasn't one. So now all of a sudden Mimikyu is on the field, the fastest thing on the field potentially. It has Play Rough to go after the potential, the Palkia there on the other side of the field. There's Rain up, Nabeel's own Palkia can dish out a lot of damage to that Calyrex slot, probably enough to KO the Finny if it comes back in as well.
Yeah, I think a really interesting play by Mimikyu where maybe the value is less like what specifically did it do, but what didn't it do? That like if you had Trick Room there, you would have been in a really tough spot as Calyrex comes in. But instead, making sure that you just get a little damage, can use Mimikyu's actually natural speed to maybe do something. And if Tapu Fini had stayed in, going for Shadow Sneak makes sure that Tapu Fini doesn't faint, and maybe that gives you some momentum later that like if we had still had the Tapu Fini on the board, you can then go for a Trick Room or something if you know the Calyrex isn't in. So really interesting to see sort of that last play, and I'm curious what Nabeel has to sort of attempt to capitalize on the momentum, or if the Calyrex is still going to be able to do a whole lot of damage this round.
This is a very interesting turn. We're going to see just how good that Misty Terrain is for both players here. But Spatial Rend does so much more than expected off the back of a critical hit for Karthik, and that is a gigantic turn of events there. Palkia on the other side also going for Spatial Rend. Not going to do very much. Really, Nabeel opting to go for the higher chance of hitting. Doesn't want to risk missing the Hydro Pump, but the Misty Terrain just makes it so that does almost nothing. Play Rough actually doing significantly more there. And now the single target Glacial Lance is just going to do so much.
Yeah, a tough turn there that, like, with this last turn of Misty Terrain, even though Tapu Fini's not on the field, still putting in so much work. Oh, and the double crit this round? Oh, Nabeel's down to just one Pokemon for the end of this game.
Yeah, that's a really rough one. The Misty Terrain is just such a difficult thing to play around there in the Palkia versus Palkia. I honestly feel like Hydro Pump Play Rough picks up the Calyrex there and also picks up any switch-in. So I'm not really sure why Nabeel opted to go for the Spatial Rend there. Just really unfortunate turn of events. And now the Calyrex here, well, it's going to be a tall order for sure. The Palkia is going to be able to dish out quite a lot of damage, but there's still, Hydro Pump can miss. Karthik could be slower. Crits exist.
Where there's a Calyrex, there's a way, but it's definitely a tall order, and we do see the Hydro Pump hitting, so that's going to do a whole lot of damage to this Calyrex. Almost just picks up the KO directly, and it looks like Calyrex is not going to be able to pick up the entire rest of the game. It is going to get off one last hurrah of a Glacial Lance, going to do a whole lot of damage, but there are two more Pokemon in the back, and they should be able to finish this off, even if the Calyrex just survives and is able to finish this Calyrex off, and that's the end of this set.
Yeah, a very solid 2-0 there by Karthik. Really a dominant performance by him. Nabeel came in with some really interesting game plans. I like the game plans quite a bit, but unfortunately just kind of fell apart a little bit in the process of playing out the games. But that's going to make things very, very difficult for South Africa going forward. They're still in it technically, but they now need to win all 4 remaining matches and also need to hope for a little bit of a favor from Panama. They need Panama to beat that Norway side as well.
Yeah, I mean, so not out of contention. Still lots that they can do, but definitely a tough order. At the same time, though, they just got the opportunity to play this wonderful team. And there's got to be so many notes you can take away from a match like this that was, even though it was just a 2-0 victory, there were a lot of moments in that set that were very close. And there's, I think, a couple of notes you can take out of a set like this of like, okay, so here are the things I have to think about. Here are the different plays I maybe could have made that I totally would have been able to win this set or put Karthik on the back foot. And so I think that's a really cool outcome of this match as well.
Yeah, and it's a nice little redemption arc here for Karthik, who started off 0-1 up until this
Yeah.
point in the World Cup. And last year he did so well for Team India, and now he's back on form. Really, that was just such a well played set. That's really sort of more the Karthik that we expect to see in World Cup, and I'm really excited to see what he can do going forward in the group stage as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that play with the Tapu Fini was just perfect. Like you get the terrain up, it puts in so much work. It doesn't matter if it gets crit. You were still able to sort of recover from that. It still did exactly what it needed to do. Really impressive play from Karthik.
All right, and that's going to bring us to the end of game number 3. We have one more match here for you all today, and it's going to be a big one. This one matters a lot. It's going to be Denmark versus France, a battle, once again, between two teams who are fighting it out for a spot in the group stage. Both of them still very much alive in this tournament, and it's a big one. So don't go anywhere. We have France versus Denmark coming up right after this.